Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Sanchez, and today the topic I'm going to be talking about is the war on drugs. Do you guys remember around first grade when you first heard about the Just Say No campaign? You know, that one assembly where we all had to go to as kids and say we're not going to do drugs and promise we're going to be good adults when we grow up? Well, it can be fair to say that the war on drugs has been a part of your life since before you even knew what drugs were. To give you some background information, the war on drugs is a prohibition on drugs and the expensive attempt to control international drug trade. This movement calls for setting up policies that will stop the distribution of both distribution and the use of drugs. The main point I'm going to be explaining tonight is that the war on drugs has a negative impact on the United States. Now, the point of my speech is not going to be to condone drugs by any means, but rather explain to you that sometimes drug users often need more than just criminal intervention to fix these issues. Also, the war on drugs is a very personal spot to me because growing up, I've always had family that have suffered from drug abuse and drug addiction, so it was a very sensitive topic for me to get into and dig deep into. So first, in my speech, I will be explaining to you how the war on drugs only perpetuates the cycle of drug use. Second, I will be explaining to you how much money is wasted every year on the war on drugs. Third, I will be showing you ways in which the war on drugs negatively affects our U.S. prison system. So back to my first claim, how the war on drugs continues the cycle of drug use. According to criminal defense lawyer Monica Steiner, the U.S. categorizes drugs into ranks called schedules. This 5-point schedule measures the dangerousness of each drug based on its addictive qualities versus its medicinal use. For example, a drug like heroin would be a Schedule I drug because its addictive qualities are very high, while its medicinal use has little to no value. However, drugs like morphine we see hold a more middle tier depending on the state, because although it is still a highly addictive drug, it still has medicinal use. Depending on the drug involved, most drug-related offenses carry a felony. That being said, not only do users need to focus on battling new addiction, they also need to focus on the consequences that come with dealing with the felony, like struggles of getting a job because that is on your record. Also, another point to look at would be how imprisonment has little effect on drug abuse. The National Association of Drug Courts Professionals claims that a study showed that 60 to 80% of drug abusers commit new crimes after being released from prison. Also, the study showed that 60 to 80% drop out of treatment unless supervised by a judge. One nation that is taking time to eliminate these issues is Portugal. In 2001, Portugal decided to maintain a law that keeps the illegality of drug use, but enforces, instead of prison time, individual treatment plans to help soothe these issues with these patients. In the first 5 years of this program, not only did drug-related issues go down, but also HIV-related illnesses and deaths as well. Now that I've shown you how the war maintains a cycle, let me show you how much money is wasted on this movement. The war on drugs wastes a high amount of money each year. In fact, the global illegal drug trade itself is worth more than $320 billion, according to Richard Branson of CNN. The U.S. alone spends a combination of federal, state, and local government spending of about $40 billion each year on drug laws, according to the Office of National Drug Control. That's over $500 a second. This could be money that could be going to more important things like prevention and education. Branson also touches on this, for instance, when he discusses how it costs the U.S. about $30,000 a year to incarcerate an inmate, but less than $12,000 a year to fund a public school student's education. Not only are we starting to see how the war on drugs wastes the money, we also see how it changes our U.S. prison systems as well. Of the 230 global illegal drug users, 10% are considered problematic. Yet over 50% of the U.S. inmates were charged for drugs, according to Branson. This could help see how the U.S. has the largest prison population in the world of 2.3 million inmates. This could be due to the fact that the U.S. employs mandatory minimum sentences applied from Congress rather than individual judges. In fact, in 2009, the most common mandatory minimum sentence, according to drugsense.org, was at least 10 years of imprisonment. In 2009, law enforcement arrested more people for drug violations than any other offense. Drugsense.org calculated that as someone being arrested for violating a drug law every 19 seconds. In conclusion, today I first explained to you how the war on drugs merely adds to the cycle of the drug world. Second, I showed you how the world is wasted money on an idea that brings little benefit. Third, I described to you how U.S. prisons are negatively affected by the war on drugs. With the information I've shared with you today, I hope that you can see while our current policies may be well-intentioned, they are not as effective as they are damaging. Thank you.
All right, Michael, the proposition's clearly identified. You have a very clear preview at the beginning of the speech. I don't think there's much doubt that there's controversy on the subject, so you're fine there. You signpost the major points as you get to them in the body of the speech, which makes it easy to follow. I think you're doing fine there. You start off with a lot of factual data at the beginning. I also like the context data that you gave us in the background to kind of set up the controversy. I thought that that worked pretty well. You're usually citing sources on most of the information that you're presenting. I do think that there are a couple of inferences that are not quite clear. For example, when you make the argument about waste on the second point, if you're going to make an argument that says that it's not doing something, you have to show more than it's just what it costs. You have to show that the benefits that we get from it are not significant or important. So I think there's a little bit of something that's missing there. And on the third point, it basically sounds like it's a financial issue about prisons rather than additional problems that come about in the prisons, like overcrowding or other issues related to that. So I'm not so sure that the second and the third points are that distinct from each other, since most of it talks about the monetary value that goes into play on this issue. There is a point where you're making a comparison to the cost of paying for children's education, and I'm not quite sure how that applies to the argument that's being given here. There's not much of an explanation as to why those things are in fact comparable, and it sounds a little bit like a value argument that you're making here. What you want to do is you want to demonstrate that the treatment programs are effective, that they are more effective than prison at discouraging people from using drugs or committing further crimes, and that the failure to use those treatment programs has led to a bigger impact on the judicial system, that sort of thing, and that we're spending money that's not really doing us any good. And I think you do a pretty good job at that. There are just a couple of places where I think you need to plug in some other things. All right, thank you very much.